In many cases, big problems in flying are the result of a lot of small, relatively minor problems that come together at the same time. The phrase, "all the holes in the Swiss cheese lined up," certainly describes these kinds of situations. And when they happen, workload builds up and a pilot can get behind the airplane. It can even happen to a proficient, current instrument-rated pilot when the weather changed. It's the story we'll hear on this episode of The Rider Report. Hello everyone, I'm Rob Ryder, and welcome to episode 3 of AvBrief's Rider Report podcast, brought to you by Avemco Insurance. Getting behind the airplane is something that can lead to disastrous consequences, even for an experienced pilot. It happened 23 years ago to my guest, when the weather changed at his destination and ATC gave him vectors to the final approach course at an alternate. He was IMC and had to dig for a paper approach plate and didn't have time to brief the approach. He wasn't ready. What happened and what he learned is what he'll share with us right after this message from Avemco. For decades, Avemco Insurance Company has been an advocate for pilot safety by promoting and sponsoring continuous pilot training and education. One of their initiatives has been to reward pilots who actively participate in being more proficient with savings on their insurance premium through the Avemco Safety Rewards Program. Safe pilots save by earning new ratings, getting recurrent training, participating in the Fast Team Wings program, and listening to safety podcasts like The Rider Report and other Avemco-recognized courses and training. Call 800-353-9089 for a free quote or visit avemco.com/Rider Report today. Don't forget to tell them The Rider Report sent you for an automatic 5% off. Premium credits are subject to underwriting guidelines, including Avemco-recognized training and memberships. Now, The Rider Report. My guest today is Tim Delaney from out in Idaho, and he's a guy who's had a number of different airplanes, and he fell in love. Well, we'll talk about what he fell in love with and how it is changing how he's flying. But in the meantime, Tim Delaney, welcome to The Rider Report.
Well, thank you, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
I would love for you to share with our audience what got you involved in flying and how your Rider Report incident led to buying some other airplanes and then what your first love for flying has become. When did it start? How did it start for you?
Well, so it really actually started when I was 6 months old. And I found a picture of, I was born to be a pilot. I found a picture probably 30 years ago at my parents' house of a 6-month-old, 9-month-old child sitting on a chair with one of those Time Life magazines, booklets, and I have open have it open, sitting on my lap with a Cessna 120 that's open to. And I found this picture at my folks' house, as I mentioned, decades ago, and I said to my mom, "Who's that?" And she looks at it, she goes, "I'm not sure, but those are the curtains on Briarwood," which was in Grand Rapids, Michigan. "And if those are the curtains on Briarwood, then that's you." So here I am at 6 months with a big grin on my face and a Cessna 120 picture on my lap. So I was kind of destined to, I guess, to fly. There it was. And so what happened was, where it really got started, I'd always had a love for planes. But in 1968, when my older brother Kevin graduated from high school, we lived in Orange County, California, Southern California. And we lived near the San Juan Capistrano Airport. And that's where the mission is, where the swallows come back every spring.
I know the place.
And my parents gave Kevin flying lessons as a high school graduation present.
That's pretty daggone generous. How cool is that?
Yeah. And, back then, I think it was $10 an hour wet, to, and all that, fly a Cherokee 140 or a Cessna 150. And then my dad, which he never did say, but I think he had the whole line. This was really just a way for him to start flying. He was
Oh,
he was in his 40s at the time. And then my mom, which was the shock, said, "Well, I need to learn to fly in case Jim, my dad, her husband, has the proverbial heart attack. I needed to learn to fly." So
this has become a family affair.
it was. So my mom was very social. She never met a party she didn't like. She never met a microphone she didn't like. She had quite a voice. She could sing. And if there was somebody playing piano, she could hold center court all evening, and she'd have her one dry Rob Roy drink, maybe two, and she'd sing all that Frank Sinatra and Perry Como and you name it songs going. Anyway, she could just had a lovely voice. So she was very social, as I said, and knew somebody at our local paper called the Daily Pilot out of Huntington Beach, I believe.
The Daily Pilot. Oh my gosh.
I haven't even thought about this, but the Daily Pilot being the pilot, so.
Of course. And Huntington Beach, they sport one of the top air shows in North America every year.
Right.
It is a huge show.
Yep. So they did a spread on it was called the Flying Delaneys, and about my mom, my dad, and my brother. And my mom is pictured in the cockpit of a Cherokee 140, smiling, and she was 42, I believe, at the time. And well, unfortunately, we lost both she and me lost the picture. We had it framed because our house burnt down in 2017 in one of those big wildfires in Santa Rosa, California, where both she lived and we lived, and they both went up in smoke. So we lost it. We lost the picture. But so in there was a 2-sentence comment about, and their middle son, Tim, 14 years old, with a sandy blonde crew cut, is itching to go flying with any of them. And my mom said, and he will probably be the one who outlasts all of us for flying. And that turned out to be true, because that was, I soloed 2 years later on my 16th birthday in 1970, got my private license 1971, and got the FAA's Master Pilot Award 5 years ago when I had 50 years of continuous flying without an incident.
Congratulations, sir. That is a huge milestone.
Yeah,
what an honor.
But I got it during COVID. So I just got it and, didn't do anything with it, although I have it hanging on my wall here in my office. But so flying has been my biggest passion all these years.
Have you been a professional pilot, or has this always been just a sideline for you, something as following your passion, but you've had other jobs to be able to afford those afford the aircraft that you've got?
So became a CPA, and then started another company in 2000, or JDH Wealth Management. So I had clients up and down the West Coast of the U.S.
Oh.
But I could go fly and see clients, mostly my wealth management clients, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, Las Vegas, Southern California. And one client said to me, it's really cool, Tim, when you fly to see me, because I say to my friends, my advisor comes and flies in here to visit with me. What does your advisor do for you?
That's the way to do business. Well, I know that you eventually upgraded to a Cirrus, but the Cherokee 6 was the focus of your incident. So let's go back 23 years to a non-business flight when you were trying to be a good guy and kind of like being a taxi driver, right?
Right. So my middle son, Matt, was going to college down at San Diego State. And at this point, he had graduated, so he was working for Smith Barney, real estate stockbroker. And his girlfriend, fiance, Allison, who also was from Santa Rosa, her parents lived there. So I've been down there, I think on some business or something. And I said, hey, I can give you guys a ride back up to Santa Rosa if you want. So they said, sure. And this was in November of 2002, excuse me. And so we got off. It was late afternoon, knowing that it was going to be dark, when we got up into the Bay Area. But I'd flown up there numerous times. I was IFR rated, and they were forecasting rain, but the icing level was high, and I'd be flying, in the rain. But that didn't bother me.
So you've got a familiar airplane that you trust. You've got territory that was totally familiar, and you don't have any weather that is going to be supposedly any kind of a serious issue for you.
Correct. So all the boxes are checked for this is a good flight.
What happened then?
Well, not all forecasts go the way they're supposed to go. So as we're a little bit south of Napa, California, the weather at Santa Rosa goes below minimums. They have an ILS there, and this is before GPS. And so I told NorCal, air traffic control, that I want to deviate and land at Napa and either have my wife come down, pick us up, or that's probably what we're going to have to do because it's dark now. And it's probably, 7 p.m. So it's been dark for a good hour and a half or so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, where I got myself a little bit behind the curve was the controller. I think it was when I asked I want to divert to Napa, he cleared me for the approach into the ILS approach into one left at Napa. And back in those days, those were still the paper chart days. And it had that big, Jepson chart book that's, that thing had to be 3 inches thick. And I'm fumbling through.
Which weighs 34 pounds, as I recall.
Right. So
Okay.
I'm trying to get the paper chart, and I think I actually ripped it out. I didn't have time. And he gave me a heading, a vector, and I'm now trying to get the frequency loaded in, look at the chart because, there's no moving map at this point. And I am struggling to descend, power back, fly the plane. Fortunately, at this point, I'm still in the clouds, but you could see, light coming through the clouds. That was probably another 2-3 minutes, but I was very much, it was becoming high anxiety. But I'd always learned, never let your passengers see you sweat. So Matt and Allison, as far as I remember, I hadn't said anything that I'm just flying the plane. They were sitting in the back having a grand time, told them what we're doing. And it wasn't until, I'm going to guess, Rob, about 500 feet AGL that I finally get the plane under control.
Wow.
And I think I popped out at about 1,000 feet, but I'm still, I got to get the flaps, may have part flaps down. I'm a little high. I got to get down some more. I'm slipping in. And finally, at 500 feet, I'm where I should be on target on the glide slope. I had been chasing the glide slope going down. In hindsight, probably should have considered to go around, but I had plenty of fuel. But anyway, I pop out, I see the runway. So I land, and my feet are kind of rattling on the pedals a little bit. I'm a little shook. So we pull into the FBO. It's raining pretty good. We get out, we go inside, and I realize there's a Cirrus on the ramp. And the call sign, I remember hearing his call sign, Cirrus, and whatever call sign was. So I go over and introduce myself to the pilot. And I said, "How do you like the Cirrus?" He goes, "Oh, it is such a wonderful plane. And we've got the moving map." He had a 6-pack, didn't have a PFD, but he had the MFD. And he goes,
"Okay.
It makes flying," because this was either a 2001 or a 2002 SR-22. And I'm like, and he had the Garmin 430s, twin 430s. So it was just, I had the King 170B radios, which were they're great radios, but very mechanical. And you can't switch frequencies. You got to dial the next frequency. So I looked at that and go, I almost bought the farm with my son and future daughter-in-law. And I said, I don't want to ever go through that again. So I got home, land came down, picked us up. And I said, I think we need to sell the Cherokee and get a Cirrus. Well, what are you talking about? So I had to explain it to her. And she goes, really? And I said, yeah, that was too scary. And I don't want to get into that again. So that was the genesis.
All right, we've gotten through it. You got safe. We've got some things we want to talk about. Let's take a break. We'll come back and you can let me know your takeaways and give me your report on what happened and why and what you might have done differently. We'll be right back. Without the right insurance, you're Sierra Oscar Lima. Avemco Insurance Company is the only direct writer in the market and never uses third-party agents or brokers. Instead, they connect you directly with an aviation underwriter in their Frederick, Maryland office, ready to solve problems and approve coverage based on your flying. Floats to wheels and back to floats, Avemco gives you more flexibility. Call 800-353-9089 for a free quote or visit avemco.com/rider report today. Don't forget to tell them the Rider Report sent you for 5% off your premium. Premium credits are subject to underwriting guidelines, including Avemco recognized training and memberships. Now, back to the Rider Report. We're back with Tim Delaney, safe on the ground, legs shaking, making decisions to buy a new airplane just because of one approach. Oh my goodness, Tim. Give me your takeaways. Give me your report on what you did right, what you did wrong, what you should have done, and your 2020 hindsight.
Well, Rob, I think when you're talking to air traffic control, they're kind of God. And so you want to, at least I have, I do what they tell you to do. And even though I'm pilot in command and I have ultimate authority to deviate if I feel I need to deviate for safety purposes, you don't, you try to follow them as best as you can. So I think we learn, every time we fly, we learn something new. And what I learned there that night was I needed to spend some time just to have them put me on a vector, give me 3 minutes. I need to get the chart. Just give me a heading and let me run for 2-3 minutes, and then bring me back and set me up for the approach back into Napa. And I would have the chart out, and I would have been able to brief the chart. I don't even think, because I was in such a rush, that I had looked at, if I have to do a go-around, what's the go-around procedure? And back in those days, it's all manually going to be flown. Today in the Cirrus, it's all auto.
Got a toga,
yeah,
right?
With the toga button, and which for the audience is, take off or go.
Take off, go around.
It's the go-around button. Everything recycles and sets up, and all you got to do is add power, and the plane starts to climb. And you got to manually reduce your flaps, take your flaps back up. So it's a much more labor-intensive approach in flying, the analog, being the Cherokee 6 or planes of that era, before we got into the glass cockpits and all the automation. But the lesson, the takeaway was, if you're really feeling stress, which I was, I was like, I was getting up to my limit. I should have said next time, and I have had, incidences similar, not the same, but say, nope, I can't take the approach yet. I need a couple minutes. So, send me on a vector and send me out there somewhere so I can orbit and let me reset and then come back in.
And in that case, air traffic control was happy to oblige you on that next time, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. They don't want you to become an incident on their watch. So they're happy to it. The other, being in Napa, you're close to the Bravo airspace. And back in 2002, I don't recall if that was Bravo yet or not, but it's very busy airspace with Oakland and San Francisco and whatnot, that going out there somewhere, was a little bit of a factor, like, oh, I'll make this thing work. And it was like, I can make this thing work. And I did, but I know that I was definitely getting closer to overload. And I think one more, it's the chain of an accident. It's a building event, and you got to break that chain. And I didn't break the chain. Unfortunately, I had a little bit more chain, obviously, to go before I was going to get myself in trouble. But once you get to that point where your mind is starting to not function right and you're overloading, then that's where you're really in trouble. And at night, it gets really in trouble. So that I was fortunate to be able to maintain it and bring it in. But that was why I told Leanne, my wife, this because I fly a lot for business to see clients and going down to see family and whatever we're doing. I realized the difference between flying analog and flying, glass, or flying steam gauge versus glass. You just have a much better awareness of what's going on with that moving map.
And even an ADS-B receiver with a GPS in it, like a Sentry or a Stratus or something like that, and an iPad takes you way, way beyond the capability, not the capabilities, but the ease of operation, I think, of a six-pack and needles on an older analog airplane. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally. I mean, the needles, being able to always, and I've been good at knowing where I am when I'm flying, just geographically. And not everybody, we know many people who struggle, in a car, especially today. They don't have the phone. They can't find their way out of their neighborhood sometimes because they need the GPS. And we've all become reliant on that. But I was blessed to have, I think, an innate skill of knowing where north is and not losing situational awareness, even in the clouds. I've never, gotten motion sickness. I can fly in the clouds all day long, and it doesn't bother me at all. Turbulence doesn't bother me. I had a client who had been a 777 captain and instructor for United Airlines, and I took him flying one time. He just recently passed away. But Al, when I took him flying, when we landed, he goes, and he had very colorful language, which I will spare you. But he said, "Why didn't you become an airline pilot, Tim? Your skills are amazing as a pilot." And I go, "Well, I came close to joining the Air Force, and I didn't. And I've been blessed to be able to use a plane for business. So, and he goes, "Actually, it probably worked better that you didn't, because when you fly commercial, you're away from home a lot." But he said, "You would have made a very good, commercial pilot." But I never went that route. But I was fortunate to fly privately, general aviation, and been very blessed to use it in business. And I love it. Just can't get enough flying.
Great story, Tim. Well, thank you for sharing that and letting us know that when you get the opportunity to take the time, don't get behind the airplane. I've been there, done that like you have. And it ain't no fun because your legs shake, you get the sweats, you get the dry mouth, and you think, I'm glad that I dodged the bullet on this one.
That's right.
Tim Delaney, thank you very much for being on the Rider Report.
My pleasure, Rob. Thank you so much.
We can't all afford a Cirrus. However, as I mentioned during the interview, a tablet Bluetoothed to an ADS-B receiver is a huge boost in safety and situational awareness. But we need to be proficient with these tools, just as we have to be proficient in the planes that we fly. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. For others, I'm guessing that you recognize that it's very much like the more than 120 episodes of my podcast from the magazine. I'm grateful to Russ Niles and avbrief.com for inviting me to join him and his team, and for Avemco's continued sponsorship. We'll bring stories of pilots who've gotten into dicey situations and lived to tell about them every 2 weeks. I hope that you'll tell all your friends that we've moved to a great new platform. New name, but the same format. And if you've got a story that you'd like to share, I'd like to hear it. Shoot me an email with a synopsis. Here's my new email address: rob@avbrief.com. rob@avbrief.com. The Writer Report theme and commercial instrumental music for the podcast are written and performed by Rob Pottorff. For Avemco Aviation Insurance and avbrief.com, I'm Rob Ryder. Catch you next time on The Writer Report.